Welcome to another edition of Community Matters. I'm Jim Cameron, your host and program director of Darien TV 79. And this, because you're such a faithful viewer, is a show where we talk about all of the good works that happen in the Darien community. And we are joined today by Peggy Twitchell, who is the president of Darien Book Aid Plan. Peggy, good to have you on the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jim, for having me.
Now, a lot of people probably drive by your building. It's at the corner of Rings End Road and the Post Road,
Yeah, exactly.
near the Christian Science Monitor Reading Room, kind of across from the fire department there as well too.
Right.
And they see the sign, but they have no idea what Darien Book Aid Plan is. So why don't you answer that question first? What is Darien Book Aid? I see you're sitting there in what seems to be kind of like a library and a lot of books. What's going on in there?
So we are a nonprofit that was founded 75 years ago. This is our 75th anniversary this year that we're celebrating. We're all volunteers, and what we do is donate books to communities in need all over the world, including locally right here in Fairfield County. We provide a great service to the community where people can drop off books here, and then we sort them and figure out what would be appropriate to send to specific people overseas who have requested books from us.
So
Um,
how did this all get started 75 years ago?
so there was a woman named Elizabeth Lamont, she went by Betty, I believe, who lived in Darien. And it was right after World War II. And she had a luncheon at her house with Governor John Davis Lodge, they were talking about the war and the aftermath of the war. This was in 1947. And she was like, why can't we just collect like books and magazines here in the US that show the US way of life and send them over to war-torn Europe so that people over there can see what it's like to live in a democracy. And it was Germany. I guess she said that like all of the libraries had been destroyed, and she just wanted to get good American information over there, and just to help people recover from the war. So what she did is she rounded up a bunch of her friends here in Darien, and they started collecting books and magazines. And she got General MacArthur on board and all sorts of people who were involved in the post-war effort. They all approved it. There was actually an act that was passed in Congress, and we started to send books in 1949 to Germany and then quickly expanded to other places in the world. And then it was all volunteers even when it started, and it just grew. And it's amazing that 75 years later, we're still doing this.
And the building you're in is the old Norotan Fire Department. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So we moved in here in 1959, and the volunteers raised the money. There was also a mortgage that I think they were able to pay off in like 5 or 10 years. And before that, so basically from 1949 to 1959, they had been operating in a number of places. And so one of them, I guess the Hindley School was not a school at that particular time, and it was unheated. But they had just piles and piles of books and magazines, and they would work in there apparently wearing sweaters and gloves and ski suits and trying to stay warm. And then they moved to the Royal School for a while, and then they were in somebody's house for a while, and then finally they were able to purchase this building, and we've been here ever since.
And the building is now owned by Darien Book Aid.
Yeah.
And I guess you have heat now as well too.
Yes, we have heat. Unfortunately, we don't have central air, but we have a little portable air conditioner that we use.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, you're the president of this nonprofit organization. What's your background and how did you come to be involved with it?
So originally, so my dad was with the US Foreign Service. And so when I was in high school, we lived in Zimbabwe and Zambia. And I remember, I can't remember exactly what it was, but somehow the embassy was involved with a very large donation of books from the United States. And I believe that my dad and some other embassy officials went to the a small rural town to deliver these books. And there was a ceremony, there was dancing. And I was really surprised at the time. I was like, wow, I didn't know that books were so exciting to like people in areas that don't have books. And I really, at that moment, it just always stuck in my head that I realized that people really value the opportunity that books can provide local citizens in terms of educating them and just even reading for pleasure. So that stuck in my mind. And then I taught English for a while in Taiwan after I graduated from college. I got my MBA, and then I was on a business trip. We had just moved to Darien. I was on a business trip, and I was sitting next to somebody on the plane, and he asked me where I was from, and I mentioned Darien. And he's like, "Oh, I know Darien because I was a Peace Corps volunteer and I received books from DarienBookAid." And I, at the time, lived on Fitch Avenue, which is right around the corner from here. And so I just remember being like, oh, I know where that is. That's, just around the corner. And I wonder what exactly they do. And so that always stuck in my mind. And then once my youngest started school, I started volunteering here. So that was about 10 years ago. And, um, it's been great. It's like a perfect thing to do to like really impact people throughout the world who are looking to improve their education and work on literacy, work on English language, all of those things.
You mentioned the USIA, the U.S. Information Agency, which is a branch, I think, of the State
Yeah,
Department.
that's actually what my dad did. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
great. Um, they have libraries of their own in many cities around the world. I actually did a Fulbright scholarship and got to do some teaching
Oh, great.
in the Philippines and in Tunisia. And
Uh-huh.
there were very robust USIA libraries there, very
Yeah,
popular with
exactly.
people that were applying to college as well,
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Um, are you duplicating what they're trying to do? Because those
No.
are not. I don't know if those are lending libraries as much as people go in, they get to read the books at the USIA library, but they must have oodles of money, and here you are, Darien Book Aid, relying on the kindness of strangers and doing the best you can. Um, are there other groups like you? Do you see yourself in competition with them? How do you fit
So
in?
So originally, back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of the books and magazines we sent went to those USIA libraries.
Hmm.
And so that was part of the act that was passed. It was the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, where there was like a real system in place where we were supplying the reading material for a lot of these libraries. We were also funded first by, I think it was the Department of Defense, maybe originally, and then the State Department. And then once the Peace Corps started, we were funded by the Peace Corps to send books to their volunteers. And unfortunately, with budget cuts in Washington, all of that has dropped off. So now we are completely dependent on individual donations, family foundations, things like that to keep donating overseas. In terms of whether we're duplicating USIA libraries, no, not at all, because the books that we are sending are not necessarily going to the capital city. They're going to remote locations that have Peace Corps volunteers living there, that have, like we send to nonprofits that bring books into refugee camps. We send to schools in remote areas. So really, they're not the same populations at all that would be like finding their way to the US Embassy and going in and reading the books. And in terms of other organizations, We definitely don't feel like we compete with anybody because it's all just doing good and sending books. Like we're not in it for competition by any means. And there are some other organizations, like one organization sends full containers of books to, like for example, Botswana, and they'll like be distributed to a bunch of different schools, whereas we send one box at a time. So, we're not sending whole libraries, although we did that once a couple years ago. But generally, we send about 25 pounds of books, and we hope it can go as far as it can go. Like, I mean, a lot of times people want more, but obviously it's really expensive to send them. It costs like about $125 to send 25 pounds of books to Africa or Asia. So, and that's not through the US Post Office. That's like a discounted shipping organization that we use.
Peggy Twitchell is our guest today on Community Matters. She is the president of the Darien Book Aid. And as you can see, she is in the Darien Book Aid headquarters. Where do you get your books from?
So we get books from the local community and schools and basically anybody who lives in the area who has books that they need to pass on for any reason can bring them here to our lobby and drop them off. And we particularly like children's books because we send mostly to literacy programs and people learning English. So generally, like some people read at an adult level, but I would say the majority of our book recipients do not read it at an adult level. Um, and but we get, schools book, kids do book drives for us, and they'll collect books in various places and bring them to us. And, as long as they're books we can use, we really appreciate it. And if without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do because we 100% rely on these gently used books to send overseas.
So the publishers are not sending you books if they've done an improved, revised version of a book. They might send you the previous one,
We
or
we get some of those as well. Yeah, we have certain publishers that give us books. We get a lot of books from schools when they're like transitioning to new books. We get a lot of books from libraries, but basically, like you can see our shelves are stocked. So we do have limited capacity. So if a school is getting rid of like 3,000 books, like we appreciate it if they let us know instead of just dropping them off because we can't necessarily use them all. It depends what they're donating, obviously.
are there kinds of books you're looking specifically for? Are there kinds of books that you really don't want to see donated?
So the kind of books we like are children's books in great condition, textbooks that are newer, IT books that are newer, business books that are newer. And when I say business books, I mean more like marketing, finance, accounting, not necessarily all those business biographies that you see, because we don't really send those out that much. We the book and DIY books we can use a lot because sometimes there's trade schools that want books like carpentry, plumbing, things like that. Books we can't use, anything old, musty, outdated, heavily annotated, highlighted, and just lots of like the hardback adult books, like biographies, things like that, we can't really send out. But we do also like to receive in more limited quantities, but we do love to receive popular paperback novels because we have 4 little free libraries in town. One at Norotan Heights train station, one at a brand new one at Darien train station, one at Weed Beach, and one at Pear Tree Point Beach. And we like to stock those with books every couple weeks so that people in the local community can benefit from all of these books that we receive as well.
And if people see a book in one of those little kiosks at the train station or elsewhere, as you mentioned, they're free to take them, right?
Yeah, exactly. They can just take them and they don't need to put it back. They can pass it on, do whatever they want with it.
Do you find people put donations of books in those kiosks themselves as well too? It's like
Sometimes,
like a
like
little library in your neighborhood.
definitely the beach ones, which is totally fine, and we kind of keep an eye on them and clean them up every week or two. And the other ones are more books that we've placed there, but occasionally people put books there too, and that's fine as long as it's books that other people would enjoy reading.
So these books arrive at your doorstep, literally, and
Literally.
you bring them in. And
Well,
what do
let
you
me
do with them then?
clarify that just a little. They don't arrive at our doorstep, they arrive in our lobby. So our lobby is always open for book donations, and that way they're out of the rain. We don't have to, our volunteers don't have to carry in lots of boxes of books, and they're protected inside. And so, yeah, people can just come and drop them off, and we have a donation log and tax receipts and stuff in the lobby. And then when we come, our volunteers will like sort through what's in the lobby, and the books that we can use get brought inside and shelved, and it's all very organized.
And the ones you can't use, where do they go?
So they get picked up by a company called Bay State Books. They pay us per pound, and
Hmm.
they sell the books that they can sell, and I think they also sell to like pulp and paper plants and stuff. So it's all recycled responsibly or reused, even if it's not books that we can use.
Do you have anybody that goes trolling for books up at the swap shop? There's quite a few books there.
Yeah, I actually personally will go occasionally to the swap shop in New Canaan since that's where I live. But I don't know of any volunteers that like specifically go there. Right now, we're actually like in pretty good, like obviously we always need donations, but we're not, and occasionally we get to like a crisis point where we're like, oh my God, we have no easy readers or we have no Magic Treehouse books. And then our volunteers will really go in search of whatever it is that we need. Right now we're in pretty good shape. I think a lot of people clean out their like bookshelves in the summer. And so we have had a steady stream of donations coming in.
So then people reach out to you and say things like, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer in country X, and do you have any books on topics A, B, C, D? They literally send you a wish list.
Yeah, exactly. So I just pulled up one here. This is an example of what we get. It's a letter or an email. So this person is a Peace Corps volunteer in Lesotho in Africa, and they teach English. They teach at a K through seventh grade school. The school has no books. She says, like, our school is very rural, so it is difficult to get teaching and learning resources, and English and literacy levels are very low. This is an issue because if learners want to attend high school, they need to be proficient in English language and literacy skills. Therefore, many children in my community don't go or end up dropping out of high school. And so basically, this Peace Corps volunteer wants to install mini classroom libraries in each class so that the kids will start reading more. And so she's specifically asking for early readers, children's fiction and nonfiction books, children's picture dictionaries, and things like that. So our volunteers would pick up a request such as this. We have a stack of about 70 requests right now. And they'll start picking out the books. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about?
I'm just sealing my.
I know.
I was packing a box for somebody in Uganda. Yesterday I did a box for Fiji. So you get to experience a lot of different parts of the world.
And what's your name? We wanted to introduce you.
Emily Crawford.
Emily. And you're a volunteer there as well, too,
Mhm.
right? How long have you been a volunteer, and why do you donate your time?
It's been so long, I don't quite remember when I got started. I took a break for a while, because of a work schedule, but I've been back wholeheartedly since I retired. And I love packing the books. I have grandchildren who are reading some of the books that we, get requests for. And so I know which ones from their experience, which ones will be appreciated by children of that age and that reading level someplace else.
And how much time do you donate doing this work at DarienBookAid?
A couple hours a week, not like Peggy. Peggy has a big job.
And she's a pretty good taskmaster.
She's very good.
Yeah, great.
She's very impressive because this is it's a big organization and it has a lot of responsibilities.
Great. Well, thanks, Emily. Thanks for your volunteer work as well, too.
Thank you.
Okay, back to that book
Yeah.
box going to Uganda.
And so,
So-
Emily's basically packing a box. Well, I guess you can kind of see in the back, the boxes are, about that big. And so she's literally gone around all of our bookshelves and picked out exactly the type of books that the Peace Corps volunteer is requesting. So fiction, nonfiction, early readers, things like that.
And that gets shipped off to Uganda.
Quite an array in this request. They
What
want
was
a bit
it?
of everything, pretty much.
Yeah, right. So, math books, science, social studies, stories, all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
Wow. And that'll get shipped off to Uganda. How long does it take for it to arrive?
It completely depends. So sometimes we'll get thank you notes about 3 weeks after the shipment has left Darien. And other times they'll write us a year later. We follow up, obviously, in the meantime, but they'll be like, the box finally arrived. So it really depends on the local postal system in the country where it's going, because we can basically track it until it's handed off to the postal system, and then it's more difficult.
So it goes on a slow boat to Uganda. There's no air freight of these books, right?
Well, it goes by air across the Atlantic, and
Oh.
then I think it goes by air all the way to the country, and then it kind of,
This is actually more of a business book.
might sit for a while before getting delivered.
Peggy Twitchell is our guest today on Community Matters. She is the president of the DarienBookAid plan. Where do you get your money from, and how much is your budget every year?
So that is a good question. So our budget every year is about, I'm just trying to think, last year it was like $60,000 or $70,000, and we get our money mainly from private donations. So it'll be individuals, and a lot of those individuals live in Darien. We're super, super thankful for anything that anybody can give. We also have returned Peace Corps volunteers who donate. There's, various people all around the country who know of us for whatever reason, and they'll donate money to us. We have some family foundations that consistently donate every year, which we're so grateful for. And basically, we can only send out as many boxes overseas that we have money to mail those boxes. So we completely rely on that money coming in so that we can keep shipping out. And right now we have so many requests, and we have a lot of volunteers working. So we've been shipping out about 40 boxes every 3 weeks or so. And so, 40 times 125, let's say, that adds up. So, we need that money coming in, no question.
And do you fundraise locally? Do you hold galas and fundraising events? I mean,
So we're a
aside from word of
small-
mouth, how do people know that you're looking for
Yeah,
money?
that's a good question. So we are such a small organization. We have about 40 active volunteers, I would say, that we haven't had like the big galas and silent auctions that you'll see some of the bigger nonprofits having. We do an annual appeal every year. And this year, because it's our 75th anniversary, we're planning to have a celebratory event at the Museum of Darien on November 14th in the evening, so that people can learn more about DarienBookAid and what we do, and just really celebrate the fact that we've been around and doing this for the last 75 years.
Are you also looking for volunteers
Yeah,
like
we're
Emily?
always looking for volunteers. Yeah. And our volunteers, we have high school kids that come, we have senior citizens that come. I mean, and everything in between. There's men, there's women. And because we're an all volunteer organization, there's so many different things that people can do. Like generally our volunteers will start by packing a box of books. So selecting the books, packing the box, getting it ready for shipping. But then we have people who email with the book applicants, back and forth, making sure we understand what kind of books they're looking for, what their mailing address is, all that stuff. We, we have somebody who looks after our old building. We have a bookkeeper. We have somebody focused on shipping books out every 3 weeks or so. So really, there's just all sorts of jobs, and people can volunteer as little or as much as they want to.
A number of the nonprofit organizations have told me that there's a kind of a challenge with volunteers since COVID, that people's time and commitment has become a little more fluid.
Mhm.
Have you seen that, or are you still, getting people who are, yeah, I'll be there every Tuesday morning?
I think that we're actually we have a lot of really committed volunteers. I think people really enjoy doing this and feel like they're making a difference in the life of somebody like thousands of miles across the world. And that's really exciting. So I would say that in terms of volunteers, like there was obviously a drop off like during COVID and right after COVID, but I'd say we're getting back up to where we were pre-COVID, which is great. But
Do you
we're
need,
always looking for more people because we always have more boxes to pack. So
there's always more boxes. Do you
yeah.
need books in other languages than English?
Yes, we need Spanish books. And we're getting quite a lot of requests from Peace Corps volunteers in Spanish speaking countries that are just working on literacy. And so children's books, and especially the YA books, like books for, teens or young teens. We don't have a lot of those in Spanish at all. And they're hard to come by. So any Spanish books would be great.
Are books as significant to the learning process as they were 75 years ago when you got started? I mean, these Peace Corps volunteers obviously are emailing you, so the internet
Right.
is out there. Is the internet replacing books?
I think it depends on the communities, but the people requesting books from us genuinely want books. I mean, they are just so excited when the books arrived. Some of them are like, these are the first books on our library shelves. And because I think that like most of the places we send to don't have reliable internet connections, and people don't have access because they just don't have money. And so like I don't get the impression that most of the people we send to have iPads and this and that, a laptop at home. Occasionally you'll see somebody will send a photo of the kids with the books, and there'll be like a smart board in the background. So it's not like it's not there at all, but people all over the world really do still rely on books.
And what kind of love letters do you get from those Peace Corps volunteers and from the kids themselves that now have maybe the first book of their lives?
Yeah, I mean, getting the emails back is just wonderful. A lot of them are on our Facebook and Instagram pages, which are it's just DarienBookAid. It's easy to find. And I don't have one in front of me right now, but they're often like, these are the first books we have, and the children are so excited and they can't wait to read the books, and it'll really help them develop a love of reading and lifelong learning. We get a lot of emails like that, and just really from the heart, thank you notes, which is so nice.
So you're really touching lives.
Yes, no question.
Well, that's wonderful. How do people get in touch with you if they have questions, want to drop off books, make a donation, maybe volunteer? What's the best way to reach Darien BookAid?
Probably the best way is just by emailing us at DarienBookAid@yahoo.com. That goes to one of our volunteers who will then, filter that email and send it to, another volunteer who might respond. Also on Wednesday mornings from 10 to 12, we always have volunteers here. So people can just stop by too. That's a great time to come when there will be people here and, see what's going on, see our location, learn more about us. We love showing our workshop to people and talking about Darien Book Aid to people.
And your mailing address is 1926 Boston
Yeah.
Post Road?
Yes, exactly.
So checks are, I'm sure, invited, accepted, appreciated.
Right, no question.
Small
And
unmarked bills, however
Yeah.
the money is going to get collected, right?
and we also have PayPal on our website, which is DarienBookAid.org. And there's donation envelopes in our lobby, so you can just put something in there and stick it in our mail slot as well. So
All of these contact information, addresses, emails, etc., are going to be on the slide coming up in just a matter of seconds.
great.
So, faithful viewer, grab your pencil and write this down if you want more information. Peggy Twitchell has been our guest today. She is the president of the Darien Book Aid, and I want to thank you not only for your service, but for your time. And please thank Emily, who's packing up those boxes going off to Africa as well, too.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jim. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for your time as well. And thank
Great.
you, our faithful viewers. You have watched yet another edition of Community Matters.